Hello friends, this is Maila Buzaid. Those of you who have been following my social media platforms know that I have had my federal student loans discharged. That's forgiving over $50,000. And when I posted about that, I've gotten a lot of questions about how I did it, what are the criteria to qualify, and all of that stuff. So I figured instead of individually answering everybody, I just wanted to make a quick video which hopefully will shed light on the process. First of all, it seems very simple, but there's a lot of complications and there's a lot of ways that you can go wrong. Now, if you are still in school, you can just talk to your financial aid advisor and they will provide you this information as it pertains to you. If you've graduated recently, this is the best time, and you are planning to work in the public sector. For example, if you work in the school district, if you work in local, federal, state, any of government entities, whether that's Department of Justice, Department of Education, Department of Homeland Security, doesn't matter. Whether you work for the municipality or the city or the county, those are all qualifying employers. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that you get them certify your, basically there is a process to certify your employer, which will then let you know whether or not it qualifies. Now that we established that you're working for a qualified employer, the next thing you need to make sure is that you have all your student loans consolidated as federal loans, if that's possible. If it is not, then whatever that is not going to qualify as a federal loan, then you have to pay it separately. You have to make separate arrangements. Now, the federal government either directly gave people loans or through a third party, they did what they call, they backed it up. So they guaranteed that those would qualify, possibly. You have to make sure, again, to go through the process in order to make sure that it's actually the case. Now that we have established that you do have a qualifying loan, you're working for an entity that qualifies, then you have to make sure that you are making 120 payments towards that. That's a 10-year period. As the quickest that you can possibly qualify is 10 years. So now you've got a qualifying loan, you've got a qualifying employer, and you made your loans, your payments, minimum payments for 10 years. Don't make more than the minimum payments. Don't try to make 4 or 5 months ahead of time. None of that will qualify. It will only count one payment. So now that we have established all of that, a lot of people, this program had started under President Bush in 2007. Which means, by definition, the earliest anyone could qualify was 2017. Now what happened? After so many people applied, something like 98% of those who have applied were rejected. Why? Because a lot of people did not read the fine prints. They either were having non-qualifying loans, they were maybe going to deferments and forbearances and what have you. Some of them were defaulted. None of that would qualify again. Or they were trying to make a lot of payments ahead of time. So that also counted against them. There's so many technicalities. The government sometimes was petty. They were rejecting them for those reasons. Now, after President Biden came into office, he made, at least they announced in October 6, 2021, they announced a period of waiver from some of those weird technicalities, under which I actually ended up qualifying for it. When I read that, I knew that was potentially something that would benefit me. So right off the bat, again, I have done all these other things that were supposed to beforehand anyway. So I was like, what's the point? What do I have to lose? I applied right away. As soon as that application process was available, I applied. The first try, they kind of gave me inconclusive, pretty much, not a rejection outright, but they basically told me, well, you still have whatever months that didn't make sense. But I was like, whatever, never mind. Then I was able to gather some information and I applied again with employer certification. The second time, they approved, which is why they wiped off all my 50,000+ student loans. Now, some people have the misconception that they think that you have to be doing a particular job, like you have to be a teacher. No, this has nothing to do with your particular type of job. All that it matters is your employer and whether or not they fall under the category of what they consider nonprofit or public sector. It may not be sometimes necessarily what you think it is. So you have to make sure it's actually certified. And the only way you're going to find out is fill out that form, from which you can get from federal student aid, and then submit it to your employer or get it signed and then submit it. All of this process is going to be very involved. You're going to have to pay a lot of attention. That's why you went to university for, right? Nothing is going to be free. It requires work. So consider this as one of your projects, main projects to be exact, evolving project, and you have to just go with the process, read everything you're supposed to do. They'll give you a lot of information. Make sure you're reading them. And if you don't know, maybe you can ask somebody who might know better. But for the most part, this information is going to be individualized. And I'm sorry, I won't be necessarily able to help every single individual, which is why I'm making this video. Now, what was in that relief or in that kind of a waiver that President Biden administration announced in October? Like I said, they were able to give people credit for some of the months that were kind of weird, or they did not initially give them credit for, whether they were making payments under the wrong loan and what have you. They are trying to actually do better, because why? Only 16,000 people were ever approved at that point, right? And this, mind you, we're talking about a lot of people. We're talking about millions of, and then 98% rejection rates. So they said right off the bat, after that was constituted, about 22,000 people will just get their loans wiped out. And then they said another additional 27,000 people will potentially get it within a few months of, making sure that they certify their employer and stuff like that. So that's how I actually was one of the 22,000, and luckily that were able to get their loans wiped off right away. So initially my projection was about July 2022, and then it came about 6 months early. Not because I actually already completed my 10-year employment requirement back in June 2020, but there was just some technicality issues and what have you. And luckily, the time in which those loans were paused, remember, right now we're still in pause. That also counts towards your advantage, making sure, though, that you are enrolled in the program. Because they said the devil is in the details, making sure that you are enrolled. Those of you who are not working in the public sector, you have a private company, you have your own company, whatever it is, unfortunately, you don't qualify. This does not apply to you. So you can just pay your loans as soon as possible, because they are not going to wipe it off. At least they haven't done that so far. There's a lot of pressure that might change. We don't know that, but so far they haven't done that. So, but if you're working in a hospital, if you're working in a lab, if you're a police officer, if you're in the federal government of all kinds, if you work for the municipality, the county, what have you, universities, then you are going to qualify. If you're working for a nonprofit organization, all of these things will qualify. But again, and it doesn't matter. You could be a lawyer, an engineer, a teacher, a firefighter. It doesn't matter. What matters is your employer. Now, this video is going to be very quick. I'm going to make sure I include the links. So if you have any questions, please make sure you are consulting with these links. Also, the government, after you consolidate your loans under the federal government, the Department of Education, what they will do is they will assign you into what they call a servicer. The servicer will give you some kind of an ID and some kind of a login to a system which you will be then able to manage your loans, see which your progress is towards the 120 payments, what your minimum payment is. Don't ever pay more than the minimum payment. You don't get credit for that. It just goes anywhere. Like, it just goes away. It doesn't really go towards, especially if you are hoping that you're going to have a significant amount to be forgiven. It's also your interest rate doesn't really matter in that case, because you are not going to eventually pay for it. So again, it requires a lot of paying attention. But if you enroll in income-driven payment plan, you have your student loans under the federal government. That means they consolidated all, and you make your 120 payments, and you continuously certify every year for 10 years, you will be forgiven based on what I have. And they actually delivered that, but a lot of people don't pay attention to the details or whatever it is. And maybe sometimes the government was giving them a lot of misinformation. That information is now at least being corrected, and there is a period of correction we are in right now between October 2021 all the way until October 31st, 2022. Make sure that you are actually reading the fine prints. I am gonna post that press release. Please read it. Make sure you are following. There's a lot of sublinks. There's a lot of hyperlinks that they will give you information. Make sure you just follow through that. If you think you qualify, if you are not going to qualify, then maybe share with people who might. If you're outside of the United States, in Canada, whatever it is, this is not going to be for you. If you have already, if you're in school still, you can get that information, like I said, from your financial aid advisor. If you're in default on all of those problems, you probably need to consult with the federal student aid. They will probably give you all the information that you need if to get yourself out of that situation and get re-enrolled. If you're working for the private sector, like I said, you're not going to qualify for this. You can still enroll in the income-driven payment plan, which means it will reduce your payments, monthly payments drastically. It will only look into it. It will take into consideration what they call your discretionary income, which is not your entire income. So that's actually still good, but that's not necessarily, so it might help you with the payment. It will extend it, prolong it, because you're going to be doing minimum payments, sometimes less than the interest itself. So that's not necessarily good in the long run, but if you're in some kind of a financial situation in the beginning, so you don't get your credit ruined, because that's really bad. You won't be able to buy a house. You won't be able to buy a car, all of these things. So make sure that you are not neglecting your student loans, because guess what? You cannot wipe it out unless you make sure that you have some way of handling it, either through the public or paying it yourself. Please do not neglect it. I know a lot of people who are making a lot of money who don't think this is going to catch up with them. It is not going anywhere. And if you do yourself a favor, which is check your credit check your credit history every year. You have to do it. There's a free one. Free credit report. You can do that annually, every single year. You will see that. And it will see everything about it. You will see who is your lender. It will tell you if there is interest rate, how much. It will tell you all of that information. It will give you also a list of phone numbers. Make sure that if they can be consolidated, the best case scenario, I would tell you, under the federal government, because you're dealing with one entity. That way, you can just deal with them as a one entity, rather than having 500 different people who will continuously sell your loans or move it around. That way, you are just dealing with one entity. So this video has got very long. I did not want to get this far. So please don't ask me individual questions, because it's going to be very, very complex. So share with others and have a nice day, and I'm wishing you the best.